Is that a curtain or is that your green screen?
Oh, this is the green screen. Yeah.
It's the power of.
It looks really believably like a printed shower curtain.
I suppose it does because it already has.
You're seeing the shadows. You've got the ripple kind of thing going
And
on.
the very
it
low
actually
right
doesn't
of
have
the
any
frame.
ripples on it. It is perfectly flat. I think it's that it
No, the shadow.
the lines.
Yeah.
You're right. Thank you.
Well, and also the
gradient.
lower right, something's obscuring it or something in the lower right.
Are you
that's
talking
the edge
about
of the green
the
screen.
floor?
Yeah, okay, yeah. So it also makes it look like it's just naturally. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's throwing me.
Yeah, no, I put I'm actually recording from the bathroom today. I put a shower curtain behind me. What are you eating?
Amazing.
You come on this podcast and you eat?
The lack
Raw
of
whole
professionalism.
cashews.
I respect
Oh,
it.
the most depressing kind of cashew.
Yeah, no salt on those. You put
No
salt on
salt.
cashews?
I don't want flavour. I like a honey glazed cashew. That's nice. That's a nice.
I'm trying to
sweet
cut the
cashew.
sugar
Like a
in my
honey
diet
roasted.
down, so these
Yeah.
kinds of things are filling and not. It's just protein basically.
I love nuts, dude.
Quotable.
I know. As soon as I said
This
it,
is
I was like,
already our best podcast.
"Phew,
Yeah.
should have rethought that one." No, Mike, I wanted to ask.
I love carrots.
I do also love carrots. Let me talk to you about a raw carrot. Have I
Mike,
told
what
you
do
guys
love?
about my thing
Mike,
with carrots?
Mike loves peaches. I
glad
guess I should
you're
have said
happy
I love.
about
Eggplant is what you
I was
meant.
gonna say I should. Yeah. You beat me to it. I should have said I love eggplants, and Mike loves peaches.
Don't like peaches. Mike, I was gonna ask if you've seen Dune, or have you still not done that?
I've not. I'm still reading the book. You guys are more than welcome to chat about it a bit. I'm fascinated to hear what you're both thinking about it.
Sure. I mean,
We kind of got that off our chest.
we did
last
already
time, didn't
touch. We did already touch on it.
Oh, then
Yeah,
shut up
I wanted to invite more opinions
okay,
because
no.
like people have started tweeting about what they think the best picture is going to be. Because I guess we're almost halfway through November. Will be when this is published. So it's like everybody's thinking about like what the game of the year is, what the best picture will be. And I will say, my current game of the year came out of nowhere. Did I talk to you guys about Inscription?
Is this Inscription? Everyone's losing their mind over that game. I need to play it.
So good. And
I did
Someone
not know
came up
about
to me
it.
in a pub the other day and said, I wasn't talking to this person, Mike, you've got to play Inscription, and walked off. It's fun.
The funny thing is, they
Like,
thought
that's
you
the
were a
energy of
different
that
Mike. They
inscription.
thought that they were
Possibly,
their
right?
buddy, and they
Possibly.
just. Yeah. Oh shit! Sorry, I thought you were someone else.
It's really good. I got a code from Clara, who works at Devolver, who's wonderful. And I was like, cool, I'm down to play a spooky looking game. It's Halloween. Let's do it. And then I played about an hour and was terrible. But like, it presents itself as a very pixelated looking card game. Certainly a lot of similar mechanics to Magic the Gathering, which I've played for forever. But that's not a good hook for a lot of people. It's like, oh, it's a card game. I don't care about
Right?
that.
Yeah.
But it's not.
As I've experienced.
Carry on.
It's a card game that not only is it like haunting and weird and creepy, and some of the cards speak to you and have characters, it's also an escape room. So sometimes I'm not going to say too much more than this because the reveals of this game are like what make it fucking awesome. It's like how far it
make
goes.
this a priority to play.
It's so good. You can get up and walk away from the cards, and there is other stuff around you. But you do have to play in this
cool.
in this
I didn't
cabin
know that.
in the woods or whatever against this creepy person who's demanding to play cards with you. You do have to do that, but you're also in a physical location and you're trying to get out.
It did strike me as somebody saying, in the world of Magic or Hearthstone or the popularity of quick to pick up short interval card video games, what else can be done with that? And the idea of sort of putting it in its own like narrative diegetic space. I mean, in a way, that's kind of what you did, Mike. Sounds like they've just done the horror version, the escape room part of it. I didn't even know.
There was actually an
a
early
component.
version of Solitaire Conspiracy that had that kind of concept in it. That we
Like a
were
room?
actually, like it was that you were at a I've not played the game, so I don't know where they go with it. But like, yeah, that you were.
Oh, you should. Solitaire Conspiracy is fun.
It's pretty good. Greg Miller.
It's all right. Other actors. What's hilarious, someone said to me the other day, you have to keep making DLC and just have every other actor except Troy in it. And the great irony is, like, the one other DLC I would consider doing, I already know is Troy.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Can't do it.
But yeah, Can't do it.
Can't
It would ruin the mise en
Yeah,
scène.
can't do it.
But yeah, no, there was an early version because the plot.
I'll do it on his behalf. I'll wear a Troy hat and everything.
Very good.
That'd be awesome. I'd play that. But yeah. Sorry, yeah, there was an old version of it where it was going to be where you, because the premise is you've been kind of put in this room to do stuff, and the original version was going to be that was going to be a literal room you were in.
I think that's all video games, isn't it? You're put in a room to do stuff. I feel like that might be pretty broad.
You know what I mean. You're kind of locked in this room, and it's really late here. But it was honestly, in the end, we just realized the FMV stuff was more fun, so we just kind of focused in on that a little bit more. But yeah, it wasn't a super interesting anecdote, to be honest. Like, not one of my best.
I always think the decision making behind different choices there is interesting, and I think
we were going to do a thing and then we didn't.
And then we didn't.
Really
interesting. Game design.
Welcome to my GDC
talk. The creativity of Inscription is what got me. Again, a game that I played that I didn't know anything about, that currently is my front runner for Game of the Year.
Wow.
Benefited
500,000 units plus, according to Steam Spy, in the first couple weeks.
What's that?
Damn good. Steam Spy, which I know is approximate.
It's often not right, Steam Spy.
But it's in the ballpark based on other developers I've talked to, because their data set is super limited compared to the old days. But they have it marked as 500,000 or more sales.
That makes sense from the review count. Review count's often a really good metric for how well games sold.
What is the number again? Like, it was like multiply the number of reviews times 48 or something. Or
it's
38.
something like it's in that ballpark of
You've
like
never heard
somewhere.
that before.
It depends
That's
on the.
interesting.
Oh yeah, so totally. If ever you're like, here we go, give away all the secrets on the podcast. Like, if you're ever interested in how well, specifically an indie game has done, I don't know if this tracks to AAA, but yeah, usually the number of units a game has sold will be around 50 times the review count. Is a good rule of thumb. Some games genres are different. It's not, again, like Steam Spy, it's not perfect. It's honestly a similar sum to what Steam Spy is doing, to be honest, under the hood.
Also, some
Probably
games.
similar math.
Plus, there's sometimes like a cultural sort of like everybody, like review bombing or things like that will throw off those numbers.
It's all, the easiest way to find out how a game's sold is to befriend the person who made it and ask them. That's the best way.
I get a Host Devolver, but I don't know.
I mean, Devolver have had a pretty good week.
Oh my God, haven't they?
Yeah.
I was going to ask you guys your thought on this IPO, and I was blown away at a nearly $1 billion valuation.
That is my biggest
takeaway. It closed
takeaway.
out actually closer to $2 billion, right? It was like 1.5 billion.
Yeah,
I think,
that was my biggest takeaway was I think it's awesome. I love Devolver. I'm a huge fan of so many of the games that they release. I'm very glad they exist. Stock market or them being publicly traded always scares me a little bit, because it's like, does that mean they're going to change? Are they going to have to change? Are we going to have more microtransactions in Devolver games? But stoked that they're considered to be that valuable. Like, that's awesome. Like, I'm
way
glad.
Beyond what I would have guessed.
Me too. I wouldn't have guessed anything close to that much. So it's awesome. They make good stuff. They deserve it. That rules. I wonder what Annapurna would be, or is Annapurna already publicly traded because of the film division?
Annapurna, I think, is private, isn't it?
It's like owned by Megan
It's
Ellison.
a rich kid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a rich kid. That's one
Megan
of those ones that's
Ellison,
owned by.
I think, just owns it outright.
Yeah.
I could be completely wrong. I saw that Nathan Gary, who was at Sony and was hired by Megan to create Annapurna Interactive, has been upgraded to their like essentially narrative content vice president across both film and games now.
That's interesting.
So he came in via games via Sony, and is now kind of helping steer the ship. I think my gut tells me Annapurna was kind of like they were essentially a counterpart to the Weinstein Company, but without all the horror show that is Harvey Weinstein. But they basically were the boutique indie who were making the kinds of movies that were, the high end of low budget, like a Jordan Peele type movie where it's on the metric of from 0 to Marvel or 0 to Star Wars. They're low budget, 10, 15 million, but that's a lot better than a micro indie or whatever, or even 20 or 30 million. and they're boutiquey. They're movies that the cynical version is they're movies that are designed to win Oscars.
And they do.
And certainly in the Weinstein Company's case, they really obviously, between the quality of films that they would make and also just the nature of the strong arming that apparently he would be doing to kind of coerce Academy voters, they certainly had a good track record. But I would say it's one of those, it's a shame that name is so marred from the standpoint that the legacy of a lot of their films are pretty amazing, actually. And they made a lot of movies that big studios wouldn't make. And that's sort of what Annapurna, their goal was. And it's obviously the same general temperament of Annapurna Interactive.
I mean, their first game was What Remains of Edith Finch. And then it was Flower? They did Flower?
Like they ported it, you mean? I mean, Flower was that game company is, just from PS3 days.
For some reason, I thought that they had brought Flower to iOS.
They did, and Journey.
Yeah. And that was Annapurna that did that.
It's because Annapurna, Nathan and Deb both are ex-Sony and have a lot of great relationships. So and same thing, Edith Finch was supposed to be first-party Sony. It was the second game of Ian Dallas after The Unfinished Swan, which was a Sony exclusive. And they canceled the project and Annapurna rescued it.
Happens a lot more than people realize.
They did Outer Wilds, Donut County. They did Florence. They did
Pathless,
as I would call it.
And they did Sam Barlow's game, which I really liked. Didn't get as much love as her story, but yeah, I liked that.
They did Sayonara Wild Hearts. They did Kentucky Route Zero.
Sayonara Wild Hearts was beautiful.
I love that game. It's so much fun. It's all of the games they make do exist in a box. The box is things that other publishers wouldn't fund. But they're all incredible. Very, very good catalog of games there that are all really different that just a lot of other companies just wouldn't go for.
And it's the same.
So
it's the same. I think it's the same. Again, I don't know with any certainty, but it strikes me as the same MO as their film mentality. Let's make films that other people don't have the sort of courage to make, or the interest to make, or the the marketing savvy to make, or whatever the case may be, whatever their real rationale, they want to make those kinds of off the beaten path. But my impression is that the game division is actually doing better than the film division. They have more winners per capita, as it were, on the game side, which is that would be my guess. I know Nathan, but I have not spoken about this. I'm definitely not betraying any confidences here. This is purely my speculation that he's essentially hey, you're doing things really right. What can we learn over on the film side as well? Because they've made a lot of interesting films, but I think very few that you could call commercially successful.
Yeah, but they have won Oscars.
Probably,
I think so,
or at least been nominated.
Familiar. Yeah, they make great stuff, and I'd be interested to see how they would do on a similar scale as Devolver, which is again still awesome. But
I think Devolver is considerably more commercially successful. They've also been around a lot longer.
Wait, for sure. But my two games of the year right now are both Devolver, which is Death's Door and Inscription. Those are my top two. I think Deathloop is probably in third for me, but that's. I don't know. I didn't know what I expected this year. Do either of you have any front runners for a game of the year, as arbitrary as it is?
The perception is that it's been a quiet year, partly because I guess last year I've seen people.
It is until you list it. It was a quiet year.
That's always the.
But then when you go,
right?
This came out this year. Resident Evil, Ratchet. I also think that we have no concept of time anymore.
I think it's also true. I think what it is there's also no. There's no One Ring to rule them all this year. The way last year we had The Last of Us,
Ghost of Tsushima,
and Ghost of Tsushima, and Doom Eternal, and Ori and the Will of the Wisp. All of those
that came out last year. Holy fuck, it did! It was before the pandemic. That was my last event that I went to.
Their launch party.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's obviously it's almost 2 years ago.
Oh my god.
We're in that awkward moment.
But it still feels like that was 4 years ago because of the pandemic. That was the last one that I went to, and I made the decision to leave before the fans came in because they had press and then fans, and I was like, because of COVID, I think I'm gonna leave early.
Yeah, it's like when we saw each other at DICE. That feels like
DICE was the last one.
50 million years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
Us and Shu. As God intended this podcast.
Picture. It's so good.
So good.
But yeah, I think this year there hasn't been the one game that has just cast a vastly outsized shadow relative to the other. Like The Last of Us 2 and Ghost of Tsushima both last year really took up a lot of the oxygen in the room, and rightfully so. That's not meant as a disparagement. This year, I feel like even with some
Returnal
major...
might be the one for me.
Well, that's the thing is, I love Returnal, but the thing is, even the games that are really, really, really good, like Returnal and Deathloop, are games that are such specific genres and also similar genres that it automatically ostracizes a lot of people. I see what
you're saying. It's not like a big crowd pleaser.
No, not enough people are going to play them because they're not an action adventure. Ultimately, I feel like Returnal, a lot of people found too hard. I weirdly, and I'm not a person who brags about finding video games easy, did not actually have much trouble with Returnal. I didn't find it very hard.
Come on, you played Doom on Insane or whatever, though.
That's true, but there are games that I'm bad at. And
your calibration is way off for shooters, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if I feel like it's a shooter, but in any case, I didn't have trouble with Returnal.
No, I know what you mean. I think it's got a much smoother, and I'm sure fans have opinions or good and bad on this. I think it has a much smoother on-ramp than most Souls-likes. It just has that kind of or
almost
roguelikes or whatever.
Yeah, I was fucking terrible at Hades when I started.
It eases you in a way that I think makes it really accessible in kind of it doesn't scare you off, basically. It lets you get to the start of the good stuff before it kind of starts kicking your ass, which I think is good.
And I think we're all, generally there are just some games that you're going to be better at than others. I can't play a platformer to save my life. But I can play
What was your take on, I remember we talked briefly about Psychonauts and just the length of cutscenes.
Incredible. I think Psychonauts 2 is fantastic. That game... I remember when I was playing through it, I kept having these moments where I was like, oh man, if I was a kid, I would have been so happy. If I were a kid, I'd be so happy to play this. And then I was like, what? No, this is making me feel like a kid and I'm happy to play it right now. Psychonauts 2, I think, is incredible. It's so creative. It's so fun, actually smiling, playing it, funny personality. I do think the pacing with the cutscenes was a downside. I think there's some controller remapping issues that they might have gotten rid of, the fact that you can just auto have levitate without going through some settings is kind of silly. But I really like Psychonauts 2, but that's also a game that not everyone's going to buy into, like last year's, like a Ghost of Tsushima or a Last of Us, because it looks a certain way. People are off-put by it aesthetically. So it's there's just no game that, you're right, there is no one game to rule them all this year.
I'm surprised Guardians of the Galaxy hasn't, or doesn't seem like it's dominated the conversation from a mainstream perspective, because that game is so much better than I expected it to be.
I thought it looked really bad, and then I played it, and I was like, oh, holy shit, this is actually really good.
Do you think that's what it is?
They
it's
marketed
been badly
it
marketed?
poorly, and I also think that maybe coming off of Avengers, which I thought was terrible, probably people expected the same thing.
That's a shame. I think, that game surprised me.
Me too.
Because it's definitely not got the kind of the budget and time of a first party Sony game, but it felt weirdly like a Sony first party game. It had that kind of, it felt like a...
I don't think it's lacking in budget particularly though, right? I mean, it's not exactly
compared to
a
Last of Us,
game.
it's going to be
it wasn't marketed like them.
Yeah.
It's funny how our expectations, how reactionary we can be, because I enjoyed Avengers more than I thought I would because I heard it thrashed about by people so much.
Oh, you think, lowered expectations.
And then I enjoyed Guardians less than I expected to because it got so much more praise than I was expecting.
I had the literal opposite.
Although I haven't finished Guardians. I've only played maybe 2 hours, so I know.
Oh, you should keep going.
It gets better, yeah.
It opens up, yeah.
Avengers bricked really my PC. Avengers is
oh, wow.
In a year where everybody was talking about Cyberpunk being buggy, I kept being Avengers was so broken for me. I would go to a level and the boss would spawn in a room that was inaccessible by accident. People would fall through the floor.
Play it instant it came out or something?
Yeah, but I was also on PC and I think it wasn't optimized for PC, where Cyberpunk was the opposite. So it was not functional. And I would try to shut the game down, but couldn't. And then anytime that I tried to do anything else or tried to boot up another game, it would be game is already running, you can't. And I would have to shut my PC down, hard shut it down anytime that I tried to play that game. It was terrible. And I played it straight away. I think it's a little bit better now, and again was also better on console, which isn't that.
I remember enjoying the campaign of it. I thought the campaign was decent. Like
if you played it single player, it was alright.
Yeah, that's how I played it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think? I mean, maybe that's the elephant in the room. Maybe Cyberpunk would have been that barnstormer had it not had the kind of launch it did. Maybe that's the thing that's left the empty space where the kind of game you're talking about would be. Because if Cyberpunk had come along,
it should have
and
come out
been
this
kind
year.
of indisputable
Such
champion.
Yeah, it should have. I'm sure that a lot of people on the team wanted it. Look, I still had a great time with that game, playing on my beautiful 3080 with my ultra wide monitor. I really enjoyed Cyberpunk. But
that's
that
been the
wasn't a reality.
sentiment.
It's more
people
common than
like,
I think the narrative suggests. Like whenever I've said that, I end up like if on Twitter or whatever, I end up with one person being like, "You're saying that because they made you," and I'm like, "No," and then 100 being like, "No, me too. I actually really like this game." I really did.
It's
enjoy
unrelated
it.
that they made you. It's coincidence.
That also happened in my chair. No, I really enjoyed it.
I was going to say, you'd be
done.
sat on the floor otherwise. It's fair enough.
Yeah, I would have gotten rid of the chair. No, I was playing through that game and I was like, holy fuck, this is cool. To like a lot of moments in it that I really enjoyed. Really loved the characters.
Oh, I want to get to it. I want that next gen port, and I'll play that.
I'm glad they're taking more time now.
Yeah, for sure.
But like Hitman 3 also came out this year. Hitman 3.
Oh my god, that was incredible.
Loved it.
Yeah, that might be the winner for me.
So it sounds like
that came out this year.
It sounds like the issue is not a shortage of good, and not just good, but sort of well liked or even beloved games, but that they come and go from our perception. Like Returnal was one that I remember got a lot of. It had a whole flurry of activity, and then as soon as it was in the rearview mirror, release-wise,
was like 3 days. It was so weird. I expected that conversation to last a lot longer. Maybe.
I mean,
Do you think that's related to like the international mood for the last year? Maybe that's a part of it.
Yes, for sure. Conversations are moving faster and faster and faster. But I still maintain that I think that we've had a lot of specialized games. Like not everyone is going to want to play Returnal no matter what. Guardians, in theory, more people probably would, but the marketing hurt it. Hitman, it's always been a lot of people played it, but it's always been niche for a AAA. Little Nightmares 2 came out this year, also very good, but also limited. Yakuza Like a Dragon, I guess that technically came out before then.
It's definitely been the case.
Judgment 2 came out, didn't it? So
I don't know how. I don't know about audience retention and things like that. I don't know those numbers, but just from my perception of my Twitter feed, it's the same as with the Aliens Fireteam, where the first few weeks it was a shit ton of people playing it, liking it, talking about it, and then it was like, oh, now this thing's out.
On to the next thing, right?
Move on to the next thing, And at least
that's why doing multiplayer scares me, because if you're not in the conversation, you're in trouble with a game like that. You need to be current.
Yeah, it's an interesting. It's my gut. I still haven't played Deathloop. I'm sorry. Ironically, I have you guys to blame because you said the first time you play, set aside like 4 or 5 hours, and I just simply haven't had that much continuous time to play a game. I'll play.
You seem pretty chill.
1 hour
when you go on your international travels, too busy to play Deathloop, better spend 10 hours on a plane.
That's the thing.
I know what you mean, though, Austin. I still
play plenty of games, but that's a half day.
Yeah.
I mean,
to be honest, that's why I bounced off Deathloop. Like I loved it.
But you only have to do it that one time, and then you're good.
But I still feel that sense of
it's a hard game to put down, though. When I was playing through that game,
more of you.
I never wanted to stop. You should
once
play
you're playing for sure.
It seems
but I think
totally
picking it up is harder. Like Guardians of the Galaxy, I've not quite finished. I'm about 3/4 of the way through, and I'll probably go and play it for half an hour after this because it is that kind of pick up and play popcorn easy game. Yeah, it's not.
That's how
I don't need to think.
That's how Call of Duty is for me. Whenever a new Call of Duty comes out, it's always like exactly what my diet is looking for in that moment. They seem to have my internal clock of some good, reasonably low rent, shooty fun. Like they release them at the same rate at which the new Vanguard is out now. Yeah. And I've started playing it, and it's exactly that. I'll play for 30 minutes, basically get through a mission, set it down, be fine for a day or two,
Yeah.
and then I'll be like, oh, I have a call in 45 minutes. I don't quite have enough time to get anything substantive done, so I'm just going to keep chipping away at that.
I do that with
I've always
Forza.
enjoyed those campaigns. Yeah.
And Forza Horizon 5, obviously people are losing their minds about. I have not played it yet. I usually jump on Forza pretty fast, but that just came out and it's currently the highest rated game of the year. Forza Horizon 5.
Really?
Yep.
Really?
I've always loved
Funny.
those. They're really good, and I guess there's
Never
something
been
about
my
this one.
genre.
Well, my thing with Forza, as someone who has always liked racing games and has always liked cars in general, I've always said that I think Forza Horizon is the racing game for people who don't like car games.
That's true. I've experienced that playing.
It's a
'cause I'm
fun
not a racing
arcade sandbox.
guy, but yeah.
They're fun. And
They are.
There's a lot of stuff that they do to make it so that you don't really need to care about racing games in general, the genre in general, which is super impressive. Did either of you play It Takes Two with your significant others?
I didn't. The aesthetics kind of put me off a little bit. I was like, I don't love the look of that because we played Brothers and what was the prison one
Escape
called?
one?
Get
No,
Out.
prison
or-
one. No.
Not Get Out. Get In. Get. Over.
Get
I know the one you're
in.
talking about.
That one.
My favorite Joseph Fares game, Get In. What was it called?
Um,
Fucking hell. I'm going to Google it. I don't remember.
One Way Out. Something
A Way Out. A Way Out.
A
That's
Way
it.
Out.
Yep.
That's right.
Get in.
Get in. Get in.
that's perfect. That's
But it was good,
that's
right? It was good. You love that game? The new one?
It's also fantastic. Like, there's a lot of games that came out this year that were fantastic for different reasons. It's really creative, and what impressed me the most, and I'd really love to hear your take on it, Mike, if you get over the aesthetics, which I get.
I will.
They have so many mini games. There are so many. The
Interesting.
entire game is a series of mini games stitched together. Co-op mini games too. Meaning, do they have to make different mechanics every single time? Like, it's incredible.
interesting.
You're like, holy fuck, how did they... And it's kind of similar way that Avengers, the amount of dialogue. I'm like, how the fuck did they do that? Like, there's so much of it that I actually found it annoying. But I'm also
Do you mean
very
Guardians
impressed.
of the Galaxy, the
Oh,
dialogue?
yes. Sorry.
Yeah,
not
yeah,
Avengers.
yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah, there's so much
Very
dialogue.
chatty game. Yeah.
Super chatty. They never shut up, which some people like. But, like, just in a way that, like, A Way Out is so consistently creative in terms of literal game design, in terms of mechanics.
You mean It Takes Two?
Fucking hell, yes. I mean, It Takes Two. I'm very tired.
I'm Austin.
I'm sorry. Shut up, Steven.
Get
out of
get
here.
out in front of that one, yeah. Well, that problem is that's viable. So, yeah. Well, I guess the takeaway of all this is that the game of the year is Mass Effect Legendary Edition.
I think it's Jurassic World Evolution 2, which
I think it's
tomorrow, and I
MLB
can't
The
wait.
Show 21. So
Okay.
mine's Inscription, and I think Inscription probably stands a pretty good chance of getting some awards.
It will get some. It'll get some nominations for sure, at least. Yeah.
Also, Forgotten City.
I see. So that's the one. That's again another time loop game, but that's
Yes.
it's like Rome, is it, or Greece, ancient Rome?
Yes, Ancient Rome, I believe. It was
yeah.
originally a Skyrim mod, repurposed and now published this year as a standalone game. I think it's on Game Pass.
I've heard really good things.
Yeah,
I've heard good
like
things about that. I need
so
to get
it
to
is a really interesting year though. But I feel like usually after a new generation console launch, there is a little bit of weirdness. Like the last year of the previous generation, we got The Last of Us 2. The one before that was The Last of Us. Like, you know, you get your absolute bangers in that final year that come out and are amazing, and then the next year is like a little bit strange, and I think it's largely because of delays, which obviously have also happened because of COVID disproportionately right now. But it does feel
Also
like a weird year.
The console shortages will also be playing a role. That's definitely making publishers more cautious.
True.
Because if you don't know if the audience is actually going to be able to play your shiny new game, then there's a lot of incentive to sit on it for a year and make it a bit better and sell to a larger audience next year.
A good point.
You know, one that I
Literally
thought, based on the initial trailer, one that I thought would surely have a shot, and I've played a couple hours of it, and it's very charming and very like shockingly pretty. Was the Kena Bridge of Spirits?
Great game. Yeah. Really enjoyed that too. Yeah.
It's one of the first games that I've played that genuinely feels like a playable Pixar film. Just like they nail the aesthetics so well, which is not surprising given that it's not really made by traditional game developers. It's like an animation studio making
Cheers,
a game.
Austin. Yeah.
It's true.
What does that mean?
True. Which is not, it's just, no, I was taking the piss. The way you say that, obviously it's good. It's not made by game developers. I was like, oh, well, or traditional game developers.
There is some interesting stuff in there.
I know what you mean. There is definitely, there's
lifers.
I had an
skills.
interview teed up with them the other day that like we couldn't do, that I'm still hoping to do at some point, where I really wanted to ask them about how they prioritize certain things, because there are some things in that game that are very clearly animation studio. When you're playing it, it's very noticeable. Like your jumps, the animations aren't interruptible. So if you do a double jump, say you're jumping to get on a ledge and you double jump to get on the ledge, instead of reaching the ledge and grabbing it, you will go the whole way up and then grab it when you fall down. So after the jump animation is completed, you're falling down, which is clearly because an animation studio is like, we have complete animations. You finish the animation looks nice. And it does. But in terms of player feedback, it means you've got like a millisecond of a delay before you grab the ledge. And you're like, I did grab it. But it
reminds
feels
me of Oddworld, that kind of
totally like
Oddworld
look. Yeah. Where it feels different in a way that almost no games do. That it almost feels slowed in some places because of that. But it's like, but they so distinctly stuck to that vision of making sure everything looks really good, and it does. And also, like, how much of it did you play, Austin?
A handful of hours. I don't know how long it is. I didn't get the impression that I was at the beginning of the game anymore.
12 hours or so, I'd get. I don't actually.
I would say I was. Yeah, I would say I made it between a third and a halfway through then.
Because those boss fights, they get tough.
Cool. Yeah, and they introduce, like, they dole out mechanics in ways I didn't expect. Like I kept thinking, oh, they've probably played their hand now, and then they kind of throw me something new to play around with, and I thought, pretty good. Like. But it's just it's one of those rare ones where I actually found I've kind of evolved into someone who has a bit of a hard time with cutscenes now.
Yeah.
And like that was, again, it's like I have this lifelong massive love of all things Tim Schafer. And it really was hard for me to get past. I couldn't finish Psychonauts, and I've got friends telling me, "Oh, this is my game of the year." And like, I'm a lifelong fanatic for point and click adventures.
I had the exact same problem.
Not that it's a point and click, but you know what I mean. His vibe, and I just thought, even the new Call of Duty has a few cutscenes that ran a tad longer than I was expecting, where I was feeling myself like, let's come on, let's go. But Kena, they're so beautiful that I genuinely was like, take your time. Do what you gotta
watch
do.
a little Pixar short.
That's awesome.
They really,
what an amazing debut as well, right? Like,
totally.
What an amazing
Ember
kind of
Lab
calling
is the name of the studio.
Yeah. Very
cool. Very good.
Road 96, also really cool indie game. Austin, we were recently on the awards jury for Indiecade. Was there any games there that you wanted to give a shout out to? Blind Drive is dope.
That was going to be what I said. Yeah. There were a couple others that I really wanted to love because they had a really... It's always the problem, especially with Indiecade, where they're trying to shine a light on the kind of, the enfant terrible types, the ones that are the disruptors that are doing something genuinely unique and interesting, and they'll give an award to a game that's pretty unpolished just because they genuinely took a stab at something really unique. And there's a few of those that I really loved for that. But ultimately it didn't add up well in a sum total, like whether the lack of polish or just the lack of substance to back up their cool little thing that they thought of or whatever, didn't really flesh it out as a full-on kind of, I just kind of unapologetically love this game.
Yeah, I agree.
But I have admiration, my favorite of which, I'm blanking on the name, but there was one where you're playing as, it's kind of a side scroller where you're playing as a shadow and you're also controlling the light source.
Yeah. It was like a puzzle, like sort of 2D platformer-ish sometimes. That game was really cool. What's it called?
It was the idea where you're I can't remember.
Hang on, I reckon I can find it.
Help redeem me, because it was one of those where the mechanic of controlling the light source, which stretches the shadows and creates and therefore, they have this dynamic lighting system, but your character is themselves also a shadow. So you're controlling two characters at once in a sort of co-op single player type way. Although I do think you can play it 2-player. I played it single player.
I also played it single player.
I remember thinking that's such a clever idea. Like that's something, given infinite time, I would never have thought of that. If I put on a game designer hat and fully embrace all the imposter syndrome that will then immediately flood in if I try to do that. I thought, given infinite time, I wouldn't think of that specific mechanic. What if the character is a shadow, therefore they can stand on a ledge that's like an outcropping of a shadow. Like if my phone is sitting on the edge of a table like this, and therefore it's casting a shadow that they could stand on. If I move the light way over there, suddenly that becomes a road, not even a ledge, and I can cross the whole map that way. And it was like, it's damn clever. That's a great idea.
Is it larger than light? Yes, it is.
Yeah, larger than light.
It was really cool. But I kind of felt the same way, that I was like, not 100% though. This isn't like oh my god, but it was still like really fucking cool conceptually. Larger than light. I want to see what it's made by.
It's the kind of thing that I'm glad you're looking that up, because I was just about to say that's the kind of thing where somebody who can think of a novel, clever bit like that, you think, I want to know what they're up to after this.
And I'm sure it's a really small team. It's 20 Watt Games is the name of the studio. Yeah, it was neat. That was definitely one of the ones that I liked the most. There was some in there that I didn't like at all. A lot of people doing like very different stuff. It's such a fun thing about getting to be on those juries, is playing indie games that I otherwise wouldn't try. But Blind Drive is the one that I would recommend. Yeah, never even heard of half of them.
Yeah.
Blind Drive is made by Lo-Fi people, and it's an audio-based black comedy is what it advertises itself as, and it's really fucking cool. Like, it was my favorite of the bunch by a significant margin. I mean, these games aren't going to be included in the award shows, and it's like, there's a good time for us to talk about it, because usually the jury cutoff for the Game Awards is, if it's not this week, it'd be next week. So nothing that comes out beyond this point can be included after the next couple of weeks. I don't remember exactly what date it is, but like, we've pretty much, everything is out that will be nominated this year for most of them, for most of the websites. Blind Drive, I don't think will be, but it's really cool. And I think it's like very cheap, I would imagine.
Yeah, I'm
it's
grabbing
$10.
it now. That looks really cool. That
It's
looks like
super
my shit.
cool. Definitely recommend trying it out if you have some spare time to do it, because you can also like come to grips with it pretty quickly.
Another one that I realized we're not mentioning is one of the most profoundly unique games of the year that I'm blanking on the name of, but the game that's controlled through your camera. The game. What?
Don't worry, carry on.
Was it also one of the Indiecade ones?
No. This is a game that's
because there were Indiecade ones that you needed a camera. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
Really? It's crap. It's gonna drive me crazy.
Controls through
like on your
camera.
phone, or
no? It's a PC game, and when you blink, it monitors through facial recognition your blink, and it will cut the camera every time you blink.
Whoa.
No, unacceptable.
Is it a horror game?
No.
It is. I remember this. It's like, and you're jumping forward through a life or something. Aren't
yes.
You? What's that called? I have heard.
It's driving me crazy. This is terrible. I gotta figure out the name of this thing.
I'm trying to like.
I'm actually amazed this hasn't come across your radar.
Is it Before Your Eyes?
Before your eyes,
yeah. God, your Google skills are faster than mine.
I wrote, when you blink, the camera moves game.
I did I did indie game blink, and it got there.
Fantastic.
And the first suggestion is a PewDiePie YouTube video from April 16th. We figured it out. Before Your Eyes. No, I haven't even heard of this. Oh, wow. It's got really high review scores, too.
Yeah, no, this is one that's made much more of a splash. And obviously, it's a very...
okay, based on the way it looks, I feel like I'm getting like Edith Finch vibes.
I think that's a fairer comparison. It is more like a drama. In movie terms, it's closer to a drama than a horror. Certainly a horror. I wouldn't call it horror at all, but that game to me, again, it's just one of those where somebody had a really clever idea, and you would think. I'm not sure why it's not. Like, I'm fascinated to know how a game like that's that novel and well received can escape the notice of a lot, including people like you who really have your ear to the ground. Like, it makes me fascinated because there's no failing on your part, and I wouldn't even call it a failing on their part if they've gotten out there. And obviously there is just a sheer amount of content and noise, but like
I think we're just all siloed in our little worlds now. I think if you're not,
yeah, it is
to a
uncommon that I
specific
miss
level.
a game like that, but I would say it's that it doesn't compel people to talk about it. Something about it is like cool, but they
that's
don't
the
feel the
only
need
reason
to share.
I've heard about it. That's the thing. I've only because it was like I kept hearing people go, "Have you played this?"
Did it come out while I was in Nicaragua? Because
You were there.
who knew what was going
for 6
on.
months.
It did not. It did not.
there's no excuse.
There's a bunch of stuff that's like come to different
released
platforms on
April
this
8th.
list, but yeah, it's just so Death's Door is also really good. I really, really enjoyed it. But those would be
been meaning
like
to go to.
that's my list so far. I'm so curious to see how this ends up. Like, what
Is there anything that's coming out? Never mind the awards, because you're right. Like we're pretty much at that cutoff in terms of like the BAFTAs and DICE and blah blah blah. But is there anything that's coming out before the end of the year?
Halo
that
Infinite?
Halo Infinite's gonna be great.
That's
That's your big
I feel
Jurassic
like-
World Evolution 2.
yeah. What is
I
it with
loved
you in
the
that
first
game? I
one.
remember you mentioning this on
Jurassic
Twitter
World,
or something.
the first one was genuinely like the most fun I've had. It's kind of just a game I just melted into basically for a weekend.
What
the
I
first
don't
one.
I know nothing about this game. What
It's like,
is
it's like a Super Tycoon.
It's a Zoo
Okay.
Tycoon, a very, 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 at least the first one, I've not played the second one yet, the first one, very accessible Zoo Tycoon. Where if you were a Jurassic Park kid as well, like the idea of like,
Very much
I'm
so.
going to put the T-Rex paddock over there, and I'm going to make it so that the raptors are there, but I'm going to put like some stegosaurs between them and the general public, so that there's less chance. Because of course the dinosaurs keep breaking out, because of course they do. It's a Jurassic Park game. But yeah, no, it was really fun.
I love
There was
they
a
keep
DLC
breaking out.
as
I
well
love
where
there's
they
just, like,
added.
the nuisance of that. Like the fucking raptors killed 20 more.
Well, yeah, you have to build.
We
you
have to shut down for a week.
And you get like your PR department like calling you up and complaining to you that like this is terrible for business. People are losing faith in the whole Jurassic Park idea. It's genuinely like it's clever. It's made by Frontier as well, so it's British.
Jeff Goldblum
British
recently
game.
streamed it.
Really?
Yeah,
Is that a
oh
thing
my
he
with
does
a friend
now?
of mine. No, I think it was probably sponsored. He did it with Jesse Cox. Let me
yeah.
see if they did the first one or the second one.
Well, he did. I remember he did the interview circuit for the first one and just did absolutely Jeff Goldblum ridiculous interviews with a bunch of like games press people, which was a lot of fun.
Did he voice for the game?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he does the voice for it. Well, and then there was a Jurassic Park DLC that had a few of the other actors in.
I wish to God that he
genuinely a
voices
really
like
nice
Alan
franchise.
Grant. That would be the most ultimate Jeff Goldblum type move, I feel like, is to go in and voice a
That would be
different
pretty
character.
solid.
GameSpot had him. I don't mean to offend anybody by not knowing my Simpsons, but GameSpot had him as part of this, like, they finally got Jeff Goldblum on the video game tour.
Yeah.
They had him do lines from like this Simpsons scene where something is burning in an oven.
Oh, it's the ham, the principal
Steamed
Skinner,
ham, steamed clams.
steamed hams,
Yes.
yeah.
Whatever it
Yeah.
is, quite famous, I believe.
But
And-
it's not.
Oh,
it's
it's
not a Jeff
profound
Goldblum
meme.
scene, though.
No, they had him voice it for fun, and then had to
No, but
pull
Jeff
the whole thing.
Goldblum's a meme, and that's a meme.
Exactly.
So if you put them together,
Two
got
times meme.
meme squares.
Meme squared.
I love.
Yep.
I love. Jeff Goldblum had a guest spot in an episode a long time ago as actor Troy McClure's agent, and he's so good. He's so where they're making the Planet of the Apes musical, and he goes, "We would like for you," or he goes, "The studio wants you to play the human." And he goes, "It's the part I was born to play." And I always thought that was such a fucking
what's
funny
the?
line.
There's the song. There's the Samadeh. What's the name of the
Dr.
main?
Zaius.
Dr. Zaius. Dr. Zaius. Yeah.
It's
Oh my
the-
goodness.
yeah. It's a
I
genius.
remember it well. Oh my goodness. But yeah, no, that's genuinely the first one was a lot of fun, so I'm looking forward to playing the new one.
Yeah.
I love those-
It's not going to be anyone's game of the year, but like I will
Just
melt
yours.
into it for a weekend. I will love it. I will. Love
I have such a soft spot for those 1 in a million licensed titles like that are actually quite good. You know, where because it's just there's still such a dark cloud over that concept that
There's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of challenges to licensed work, you know. So
Like The Walking Dead was the first one I remember when that game was literally contender for Game of the Year. It was like, wow, people have finally started to realize there doesn't have to be a kind of baked in curse or like a cynical, the studio is just licensing out their IP, just hoping to bring in some extra cash, but like they really actually want someone to make something good with it. And that was one of those first instances.
Owned games consoles as kids. That's the transition that happened. If you look generationally, and we experience this like all the time throughout John Wick, and I've definitely experienced it in conversations since, like the suits of the film industry were gamers.
Yeah,
as kids.
Sure.
They understood it. They played GoldenEye. That was the only licensed game they liked. Like I remember with John Wick, GoldenEye was brought up in like every other meeting of like, we gotta make one of those good licensed games like GoldenEye, okay? And it's like when you're in that room, you're like, oh, okay, that's really cool. That's a good thing. So I think the ratio's improving. I think on licensed games, because I think as well.
That's a really interesting observation as to why.
I think it's that. I think it's also. I think it's also we're in an era where the IP, where people realize the benefit of having like a cross-platform IP, right? So everyone's looking at like the Marvel Cinematic Universe and going, we need something that can be in games and movies and books, and so I think everyone's kind of we used to be the lunchbox, now we're an extension of the universe. Video games, I mean, like it's kind of there's a bit more of an awareness of the role that it can be.
It's true. They used to be like a bad movie tie-in, and now it's its own property. Not just.
And those still exist, largely on mobile. There's a lot of that kind of stuff, but at the same time, like I think when a studio like Marvel makes something like Guardians of the Galaxy, they are intentionally using that as a space where they can tell a different story. They can road test characters, maybe that they're thinking of bringing into the movies. They're looking to expand and extend on that franchise and kind of play with what they can do. It's a good test bed. It's not just let's get some cash, which is what I think it was when we were kids.
Look at video games go. Who'd have thought?
Hey,
look at them go.
Relevant cultural objects, video games.
Even if they only stay in our consciousness for 1 week at a time.
But I think movies are doing the same right now, and it's like, I'm looking at this list of what the
so true.
The guests for Oscar hopefuls are. I haven't heard of half of these movies, and I think that's
Jose Paul needs to win everything.
You're right that's not a phenomenon. That is pretty normal. But I think that it's worse this year because of the lack of people going to cinemas, means that there are less average Joes talking about movies.
No one's casually seeing a movie in a cinema. Even if you're completely okay and feel completely comfortable going out in public, you're still second guessing that decision for 5 minutes. Yep. And that for casual film audiences.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I've been to several movies. I didn't second guess it, but there are constant reminders that this is a novel experience. You're wearing a mask.
Movies.
Exactly.
You've seen less movies.
Yeah, it is fascinating. Like you're absolutely right though that the movie, it's the same phenomenon, because I remember I saw the Marvel Shang-Chi and I quite liked it. I was like, this is way better than I was expecting it to be. It's pretty awesome. It's
Disney Plus next week, I think.
Yeah, well worth watching. I really it's among my favorites of the kind of standalone or character introducing ones. Like it's really really good. Had a lot to love about it. Really gorgeous art direction, and there's a bunch of cool stuff in the third act that I won't spoil. That I was like, that damn, really into that. And yet it's funny that when I think back, I think maybe your time dilation is sort of the phenomenon, because I think, when did I even see that? Wasn't that like years ago? And it was, I don't know,
a month?
10 weeks ago. Yeah. Whenever it was in theater.
But I also haven't seen Eternals. It's just different. It's a different vibe right now that I'll wonder how that will adapt. But yeah, the conversation for everything is moving really quickly. Like, I can't believe that I waited 3-4 weeks to see James Bond and I didn't have any of it spoiled for me.
I still haven't seen it, and I had it
spoiled by my neighbor.
Yeah, you said that last week. That's nuts. That sucks so bad. I mean, there's stuff that happens in it that, like, there are multiple things that could be spoiled, but nothing. It's very strange to approach award shows in general this year. Even music, I feel like, is just passing by, and I don't know if is that everything, or is that just Twitter? Like, where is this coming from?
I think we're just all like blinking, stepping into the sun. again.
Yeah,
Do you know what I
maybe.
mean? Like it's
It
that
could
it's
be
that
that-
rebirth, that cultural rebirth. It's
But
going to
how
take a
does
little
that lead
while.
into conversations moving quickly?
Well, I mean, to bring up my theory of aging and the passage of time,
Brilliant.
so my whole thing was that time passes slower the more new interactions and new pieces of data that are happening. So it follows, if you've been in the same house looking at the same four walls for a year, the time flow would be moving faster in your brain, but also you're going through stress, which is like a complementary kind of slowing down. We're all a bit jumbled up. We've all got kind of jet lag, like profound jet lag
I
of
also
the
just
soul.
wonder if everyone is a little bit more online, because that's what they had to do to socialize for a long period of time. And thus the nature of engagement drives people to move on to the hot thing a lot faster because everybody is kind of consuming content at a increased rate. We're spending more
That's
hours. I don't know if that's happening, but I would
makes
think a lot
sense,
of people
though.
are spending more time on social media than they were before. Thus, social media moves faster.
How could they not be, from the standpoint that it is the primary way to interact with people,
Right.
even still relative to 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something, just as an aside, but since you mentioned Eternals, it just made me laugh because it harkens to your days in the writing of reviews and being part of that ecosystem of writers. I saw a headline that was going viral a few hours ago that Twitter was trying to show me of. It was like Eternals has lowest grade of any Marvel movie yet, and so I clicked on the article, and it goes, these half dozen are given an A plus. These half or dozen or whatever are given an A, and Eternals is a B plus. and I was like,
Failure.
That's your scandal. That's your such a. I was like, God
I mean,
damn.
it's amazing how consistent Marvel movies have been, right? Just like
They follow
in
the
terms
same
of any
formula.
franchise.
No,
If it was easy, everyone would do it, right?
That's true.
That I have a lot of my respect for them has only gone up. In the old days, whenever a big blockbuster movie would come out that I wasn't particularly passionate about, that was always my wait till I'm on a plane movie. Like that's how I've seen pretty much every Transformers movie, and because they're not really my, like, Dune is the kind of movie I go out of my way to see in the theater.
Yeah.
And I love the theater experience. And to me, even like an intimate drama about like people dealing with life is better in a theater than at home. Like to me, the theater is de facto always superior because I'm just, I live in LA. I moved here because of the magic of movies. Like I just love the theater experience. But there's some movies that are just less of a priority. And Black Widow had slipped onto that list for me because everyone was like, it's fine. And then so I did finally, when I went to Belgium a few weeks ago, I finally watched it on the plane. And, I was in a nice seat with my proper kind of noise headphones and stuff. And I have to say, I was like, I think people were unfair to this movie. It's quite good also. Like
movie.
all the fucking MCU movies. I was like, I got to say, I really enjoyed this
I didn't
one
see
too.
Suicide Squad either.
That was also fun.
That was a lot of fun.
That one I feel like I have seen more positivity than Black Widow. Did people... Again, I feel like I didn't see a lot of negativity about Black Widow. I just didn't see many people talk about it.
I think it was apathy. It was this movie would have been really, because it takes place right kind of concurrent with Civil War. And there's no real reason why it couldn't have just been made back then because it doesn't really inform future MCU stuff. It just kind of was one of those that it felt like.
Well, it gives the origin story of her waistcoat.
Yeah, like it's one of those things that they thought, this is a little, maybe too little, too late, kind of thing. But I think that's an unfair. The MCU I think is better for it being there personally, but it's not. It doesn't change things the way.
It is also that
Others have.
fractured audience thing, right? Like it was on Disney Plus, but it was like behind a paywall, and like
they didn't really know what they were doing with that one. I think maybe, yeah.
Oh, I bought all of them. Like I 100%. Me and Carrie just wanted movies so bad. We were watching all of those.
Then you're a great person to ask. With the way that they did it, did you had to buy the movies individually for all of them? Were they different prices?
Subscription, like. No, that in the UK, I think they were all 20 quid. Which, to be fair, so cinema's much more expensive in the UK than America. So if I'm going to the cinema with my girlfriend, by the time I've paid for transport and the train ticket, transport and the cinema ticket, I've spent 20 quid on the trip to the cinema before I buy like concessions or whatever. Right?
Oh yeah, same
so it's
here.
Like for me, so for us, it was like a trade-off of like, yeah, it's 20 quid.
It's a good point.
If it's a movie we want to watch, and yeah. And I had to see Jungle Cruise as quickly as possible because I'm a massive theme park nerd, and I had to see The Rock do all the jokes, and he does all the jokes.
He does all the jokes.
He does all the jokes.
Very good.
I think it's 30 on Disney. Like I remember paying that for Cruella.
It might be $30. Yeah,
30. Yeah, which would be $30
would be 20 quid by that. Yeah.
I enjoyed Cruella a whole lot. I thought that movie
really,
yeah, like not in terms of narrative. Visually and the soundtrack, I thought were dope. It was an enjoyable thing to perceive.
Yeah, that's an interesting. Yeah, no doubt about it. That visually,
the fashion stuff was beautiful. Like it was so cool.
Yeah,
there's another thing here. All the Marvel TV shows on Disney Plus were pretty solid. Like there was a lot of that stuff did quite nicely.
Yeah, I
really enjoyed
I liked WandaVision.
Stuff.
I haven't watched What If. I did recently just watch some of Star Wars Visions. I thought the first episode is cool as hell, and then the second episode I was like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. So it's a really weird mix, but because it's
like Love, Death, Robots, yeah, where
exactly it's like, similar thing. It's different animation styles, disconnected stories. So some of it's really good and some of it's terrible. But the problem is the terrible stuff. One episode I was like, I can't believe you've done this to Star Wars. Like it's precious. Like they haven't done a million things to Star Wars. I was like, oh, awful. There's this like pop punk band that plays. I just thought it was so stupid. But some of the ones that aren't as good are just very childish, which you should expect from a franchise that Lucas said was made for children.
It's like Animatrix, right? They've done kind of. I was obsessed with Animatrix as a team.
The animation styles are all different.
Animatrix. Yeah. You into Animatrix? You must have been Austin.
I liked Animatrix.
So did I.
I just watched it. I just watched them.
Oh wait, I thought you were young. Sorry, I thought you would have not seen that.
I don't know why I saw Animatrix, but I certainly did.
Oh, okay. Sorry, yeah. Sorry to exclude you. Yeah.
No, it's all right. I was like 10, but I think I didn't see it until later than that.
Isn't it funny how Star Wars is uniquely able to kind of re-prime us for heartbreak, unlike so many other franchises? Like you're like, how have you done this to Star Wars? We've said that. That's been the default position since 1999.
That's why it's my own fault.
Actually, 1997.
Yeah. They've done so many stupid things with Star Wars across the years, but I'm still like, oh my God, this? But then I still love other parts. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. We all just need to get over it.
It's so baffling. I almost got broken, like finally reached a point where I'm like, you know what? I'm just okay if they can do whatever the fuck they want. I'm an adult finally. With, when
you've grown up when you stop being upset when Star Wars is bad.
But here's the thing: I still regress because I remember in Solo when the toll booth worker gives him the name Solo, I was like, all right, I guess I'm out. I guess I've just reached. It's like that South Park episode where the adults, everybody is just speaking shit noises and nothing is good anymore. I was like, I guess I've reached that stage with Star Wars now. But then it's like I watched Mandalorian and I was like, oh my God, I love it again. It's so amazing. And then there's like little bits in, season 2 where I'm like, how did you do that? And I just immediately.
I think that's the thing about being one of the biggest IPs ever to exist, is that some of Star Wars is for you and some of it isn't, and that's okay. And I actually think it's
also,
kind of wild. Right? Yeah, for sure they do.
They keep reinventing it in a way that most franchises don't. Most franchises will just give you the same thing over and over. Where Star Wars, they try for stuff, and yeah, some of it's. It's not for you.
That's the biggest complaint with the sequel trilogy is the lack of trying stuff, and that's why the big sort of hardcore Episode 8 fans and Rian Johnson apologists they're like that's the whole premise of why that movie is controversial because there's like the people that say, hey, this one actually did try to do something different and you all hated it. So fuck you for complaining about things being static because you rejected the one movie. It's weird. That's one of those ones that I've kind of 180'd on. I still don't particularly like that movie because as a storytelling experience, I felt like it was just broken. But at the time I thought this is so out of step with Star Wars. I was definitely one of those people that my instincts were saying, this doesn't work for me. That as time has gone on, I've digested and I've watched many like 3-hour YouTube videos.
I've seen a lot of those about that movie. More than any other movie, I've watched 3-hour YouTube videos about.
And I have to say, I've been pretty won over where I've said, I think that I can really commit. And I think also then seeing Knives Out and being like, he really is a fucking great filmmaker.
You got to go back. You got to watch Brick. You got to go back and watch like the older Ryan Johnson stuff.
He got good PR from Knives
Brick.
Out being so good for sure. People were like, oh, I think the thing with The Last Jedi is very similar. I didn't hate it upon my first watch, and I never felt as staunchly against it as a lot of other people did. But I still don't like it, and I mostly don't like it because of the storytelling issues, like you mentioned. Is that what is set up in the previous movie that I was super excited about? He shits on, and he shits on it not to create a good trilogy, but to just be like, it's different. Not what you expected.
I don't want to. We don't need to relitigate this. And my God, do I not need the comments against me? But like, I don't like. He's not. I don't think. So yes, he's pulling away from some of the stuff set up in the previous movie. But to me, it's about he's trying to broaden it. He's trying to show you different kinds of stories. But he's also
with no end.
Of the stuff
the Snoke thing.
But that's the point.
Why?
The Snoke origin is uninteresting for future storytelling. I think he was genuinely trying to set up a bunch of playing pieces that you could spin off Star Wars in 100 directions, which was exciting as an audience member, kind of to go, oh, this could be somewhere. So you don't need to be a rich kid to have Jedi powers. Cool. You don't need to be part of this specific kind
royal
of
bloodline. Yeah,
I like some of that. Yeah,
stuff like that, which is like genuinely trying to like broaden the playing field. Or the guy, the cool guy who flies spaceships really well. Maybe he's not like awesome. Maybe we're going to move away from that archetype. There's just so many things in there that was like just felt like it was broadening what a Star Wars story could be.
I don't feel like Snoke did that though, because you gave me someone to be invested in, my big bad guy, of two, I suppose, and then you just cut it off with no replacement, and so an audience is just like, but what? And then they're like, somehow Palpatine returned.
Is that Ryan Johnson's? Well, Ryan Johnson didn't bring about Palpatine. Is that Ryan Johnson's mistake?
Yes, because I think again we could get way heated about this. That one I think is his mistake because there's no easy setup. Okay, let's not even say it's Ryan Johnson's mistake. I'm going to say it's like a more high level mistake of them not communicating enough between films. But
there's
nowhere to jump from there that you're like, that makes sense, that can circle it back around when it's like, that's what you've set up.
I think Ryan Johnson's primary goal was to break the circle and try and allow for stories that go in different directions.
I think J.J. Abrams is brilliant at many ways.
Mystery. Okay.
I think this is where the problem is. What you're saying, that there was a double-edged. It seems that there was a double-edged mistake of not. They've openly said they made the movies kind of one at a time and just picked up where the pieces left. There was no coherent plan. Which, love him or hate him, George Lucas made 2 trilogies that actually did have a through line enough to at least give you a sense. When he made, yes,
there'd be less brother sister makeouts if he had a long-term plan.
That is true.
Franchise.
Good point.
It's what?
They wouldn't have had incestual kissing.
No, well, if there was a plan.
But that's the details. The details were not sketched out. No, honestly, no, I'm talking about high level storytelling of like the broadest possible plot points. That was all just, archetypal hero's journey stuff. The idea was, okay, I've got this all kind of loosely sketched out. And then, by the time you made the prequels, that was like even I knew going in.
By the time he did the prequels, I think, he absolutely had like a map for what he was trying to do in terms of getting it back to where he was. Yeah, for sure. 100%.
So I think the lack of a 3-movie plan, and also the fact that they apparently they just said to, the directors, take it and run with it, make it your own, because Colin Trevorrow was originally going to do episode 9, and so the plan was like 3 different directors kind of just picking up where the last one left off. It's almost like improvising off a jazz solo. Like, this guy finished, I'm going to just in the moment respond, and that is a woefully difficult thing. So I think he was responding to what he was given which hamstrings a lot of choices. And on top of that, I do agree with you, Mike. He was sort of saying, okay, how can I reject as much of it as possible and try to take it somewhere new, which of course then really doesn't work if the third movie's like, actually, we don't like any of that.
Guy. Yeah.
We're going to reject your rejections. And so it's like,
that's the elastic band snap, right?
Yeah, it's so.
I like how just any conversation where you talk about, you get a bunch of nerds to give opinions on things. It always comes back to The Last Jedi. It's just always got to come back to like, but
it's the Godwin's law.
Has to happen. Can't not be discussed.
I have a post-recording anecdote on this subject to share.
Ooh, related.
Nice.
I feel like that should be it for this episode.
We got our Star Wars in.
We did. We've mentioned Greg Miller. We really covered all our bases. Let me intro the show. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Play Watch Listen. I'm Alanah Pearce. I'm a video game writer. That's Mike Bithell. He's a video game director, and that's Austin Wintory. He is a video game composer. Troy is sadly not with us, as he has just returned to the US and has to catch up on a bunch of stuff, but will hopefully be joining us next week. I will see you guys then.
Bye.
Bye.